As a result of the process of revolutionary change initiated in Cuba in 1959, there was a massive exodus of Cubans to the U.S. It is estimated that 1.1 million persons of Cuban origin currently live in the U.S. and that more than half of them reside in the greater Miami area. One of the least known aspects of contemporary Cuban Miami is the establishment of a fairly sizable cigar manufacturing industry within Miami's Little Havana, the area of the city with the highest concentration of immigrants from Cuba and Latin America. Most of these factories are merely a storefront, where the tabaqueros make the cigars at old wooden desks, the same way they did decades ago in Cuba. The other part of the factory, usually the rear, is used to store the tobacco leaves and the finished cigars that are ready to be distributed. The factories produce as many as 20 different types of cigars, ranging in price from 50 cents to $3. They get their tobacco leaves from the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua, Brazil, Cameroon, and sometimes from Connecticut. Almost all the tabaqueros learned their craft in Cuba at a relatively young age, and they have been making cigars virtually all their lives. Most factories pay their employees by the piece, which equals a weekly wage of $120 to $110, barely minimum wage. The first phase of manufacturing a cigar takes place overseas, mainly in Honduras and the Dominican Republic. When the tobacco leaves are harvested, they are placed in huge warehouses where they are cured and fermented for a period of up to 2 years. After curing, the next step is the escogida, the selection of the best leaves, according to quality, size, and appearance of each leaf. Next, la capa, the upper leaf of the tobacco leaf, which is used as the outside layer of the cigar, is moistened and set to dry overnight. The next day, it is destemmed. That is, the central vein or stem of the leaf is removed and the leaf is split in half. This can be done very simply by hand or more efficiently by machine. Traditionally, the job of this palilladora was done by a woman. El Crédito, one of the only factories that destem the leaves themselves, has maintained this tradition. Meanwhile, la tripa or mogolla, what will become the inside of the cigar, is ripped into smaller, more manageable pieces and stored in large barrels, and is mixed together with other types of tripa from different farms in order to create a unique flavor. The barrel is then placed in la barbacoa, a type of storage rooms where the leaves are dried and fermented. Next, the best tobacco leaves are selected, handed over to the tabaquero, who then makes el bonche, bunching together la tripa, the leaves that make up the middle of the cigar, and wrapping them closely together with a larger leaf of the same kind. After a while, el bonche is placed in a wooden mold and then in la prensa, or press. After a while, el bonche is taken from la prensa and handed to another tabaquero. Meanwhile, la capa, that has been destemmed and moistened, is also handed over to the tabaquero, and he is now ready to begin the manufacturing handmade rolling process. El tabaquero removes el bonche from the mold and wraps it inside la capa, which is still very moist. La chaveta, a curved blunt knife, is used to trim and cut away the unneeded portions of la capa. A jelly-like glue made from vegetable oil is used to hold la capa in place. The cigar is then placed in a device that cuts the ends so that the finished product conforms to a standard size. Every 50 cigars a tabaquero makes, he bundles them together and puts them in a small, closet-sized storage room that is lined with cedar, where they lose some of their humidity. After a while, the best of these cigars are selected and handed to a worker, usually a woman, who wraps el anillo or ring around each one of them, slips on the plastic wrapper, and places them in some sort of package to be sold throughout Miami, the U.S., and much of Latin America and the world. Miami-made cigars are getting stiff competition from the cigars made in the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and Central America, which are being imported in large quantities into the United States. In addition, the Miami factories get very few workers, and almost no young people are learning the trade. As the old tabaqueros who roll cigars in the Miami factories pass on, their children are not succeeding them in the craft. Who will take their place? The youngest tabaquero encountered is in his 40s. All the tabaqueros learned their craft in Cuba 20 or more years ago, and almost no one has carried on that legacy. Within 30 years, most of the tabaqueros will have passed on, and with them, the art and tradition of cigar making will have passed also, at least in Miami. It is an art and a tradition that was brought to Florida over 100 years ago.